I'm now joined by the head coach of the Penn-Trafford Warriors, John Ruane. His team gets into the playoffs. It came down to the wire, but they score a thrilling overtime victory against Franklin Regional to get into the 5A field. First off, John, I know that the majority of the field had already been set in terms of teams in the postseason heading into the final week. You were an exception to that. And not only did you go to the final week, you went to extra time. What a roller coaster that must have been to get in. What was the excitement level like for you and for the players after that one on Friday?
It was a really thrilling game. Franklin's really good. They do a lot of things that are difficult to defend, and they're really physical on defense. And they have weapons in the kicking game as well. So we knew it was going to be a very difficult game. And they won our conference for a reason. So just to beat them from that standpoint was very good. But the way it came down, and especially needing a late score to tie it and then get into overtime and pull it out was pretty thrilling, especially for a regular season game on senior night, and the outcome of it got us into the playoffs was pretty. Combine all those things, it was really thrilling.
I know it's always a big rivalry matchup when the Panthers and Warriors go against one another, so that adds some extra juice. But do you think that maybe the urgency that your team played with was something that Franklin Regional really wasn't able to replicate since they had already secured their spot?
No, I don't think so at all. I think they came ready to play. They had some guys that were even banged up, I think, that played. So they wanted to win. They wanted to win the conference outright. They were well prepared. There was no doubt. I just think it was a really good football game. Two teams that were tough and physical, and it went to overtime, showed you how tight the game was, and we were fortunate to pull it out.
So I talked to you after the loss against Gateway, and that put your team in a bad spot, but you said there is a path potentially. We just have to take care of what we can control. You did that by defeating Plum in a hard-fought victory, and then obviously defeating Franklin Regional as well. Was there anything that really changed in terms of your team's performance over the last couple of conference games?
I think we got back to running the football the way we need to. And, spearheading that was Owen Demiri, his return. He had been out 6 weeks. So you combine him with Tasso Whipple, who's been great in his absence, and since Owen's been back. Plus Tommy Kalstein, after missing 3 games, was back, and he's now running the football the way he was before he got injured. He was doing a tremendous job. And then, he had Conlon to it. That should be our strength. If we can do that, we can throw some play action passes and move the football. We just have to do a better job of finishing drives. We've moved the football between the 20s. It's a matter of putting points on the board once we get down there. And that's been our Achilles heel to this point this year. So we were able to do that when it mattered Friday, thank goodness. And obviously in the playoffs, you better do it or you're out.
You've been to the postseason nearly every year since you've been guiding Penn-Trafford, and I'm sure you've gone in with winning streaks. Maybe at times you've maybe not finished the regular season as you have wanted. Does it make any difference?
Oh, I mean, you'd love to be playing your best football right now. So, yeah, I think it does make a difference. Like Pine is obviously rolling right now. So they're playing really good football. We have to match it. At the same time, one thing we said made clear as day, all 8 teams that are in are 0-0. It was difficult to get in this year. There's really good teams on the outside looking in this year, based on Garner points and things of that nature. So getting in was a big deal, but understanding now it doesn't really matter what you did to get here. Now you're here. Everybody's 0-0 with a shot.
Talking to John Ruane of Penn-Trafford, his team in the 5A playoffs. You mentioned it's a smaller bracket. There's just 8 teams. You're one of the wild card teams. So I'm guessing you probably had a decent idea of where you might be seated. How did the number 7 seed align with what you thought it might turn out to be?
It was pretty much the only place I thought we would be. When North Hills got in, we figured they were going to Bethel Park. They could not play Pine, and we were the other wild card team, and Pine was certainly in the top 2 or 3 teams. And then Franklin was the 3rd team, and we knew we weren't going to play them. So what crazy as Friday was, I think there were 16 scenarios based on the other 4 games, 17 when you include ours, for everybody to get in. It was complete craziness. And then once the playoffs were set, it was pretty easy, I thought, to seed the 8 teams.
And so I'm guessing that most coaches, and you'll probably fall in this category, appreciate the extra couple days of preparation as opposed to not too long ago when the seedings came out early in the following week. How much does that help?
I mean, it's probably the best change that WPIAL ever made. It was a nightmare waiting till Monday night, and it just didn't make any sense. And I'm really happy they made that change. And so is every single coach I've talked to. I haven't heard one person upset about it. You need the weekend to prepare. So why, if it's a playoff game, would you prepare the least amount of time as possible? I know everyone's doing it the same way, but it just didn't make any sense. So the way they're doing it now is far, far better than what it was.
Well, you're doing a lot of preparation for Pine Richland, and yet it's a team that you've seen so many times in the playoffs. You've played them now 3 consecutive years, and going back to 2015, you've seen the Rams 4 times in the postseason. The prior 3 times were in the semifinals. So what stands out about this year's version?
Well, I mean, they have a lot of guys back from last year. We watched the film from last year just to catch up and see who's back, and they have a lot of studs back from a year ago. They're a physical team. Let's put it that way, and they're fast. They run to the ball really well. You can tell Coach Ladon has them a really aggressive group. Paul Meyers, fantastic dual threat guy. They made the move to put him back at quarterback, and we remember facing him in the playoffs last year, and he gave us fits. So, like I said, too, they're playing inspired football right now. They're on a 6-game winning streak, and they look good doing it. I mean, they're beating some good teams along the way. So this is a great team that we're playing, and they seem to be clicking all cylinders.
They eliminated you in 2020. You knocked them off last year, and now you're facing them again. And yet, even though maybe some of the players have been around for all 3 of those years, they've had 3 different coaches during that time. Have you seen drastic changes from one year to the next to this year? And can you use anything from the past years now that they have a new staff in place?
Yeah, there's been a lot of change. There's no doubt. I mean, it's 3 different guys with 3 different philosophies. But I don't know what we could use from the past necessarily, other than watching some guys on film, see how they've progressed from the previous year. But every year is different. You look at the previous year if you played the same coaching staff to see what they were thinking maybe. But ultimately, with Huddle, we have 10 games we could watch, and we've done that. So, we're focused on this stuff this year. Our lineup and our scheme is totally different than a year ago. So while you can take a glance and maybe it helps sometimes, I don't know about this year.
I don't know that there's many matchups this upcoming week that are going to pit 2 championship winning coaches against one another, but that is the case with your team in Pine Richland. Do you feel any different having won that championship last year in terms of the confidence heading into a postseason run this year?
Well, I mean, last year doesn't matter really, but the fact that the kids do have playoff experience and have had some success in the playoffs, I think, we're certainly going to count on them to use that experience and, especially the senior group, especially the guys that played last year, to kind of lead these guys and make them understand the urgency of a playoff game, the way you got to play at an opponent's stadium and in front of a hostile crowd. So, those experiences you hope pay off. But at the same time, last year's ancient history. And like I said, we're a different group, different schematically, different personnel. So a little bit of both.
At least from my perspective, this looks like a wide open field. And I know Bethel Park has had a great season. You mentioned the Rams are rolling recently as well, Franklin Regional winning your conference. And yet I would not be surprised if any team, including a number 7 seed, makes a run. Do you kind of feel like when you look at this bracket, it's 8 teams, all of which you can really go deep?
5A is really good. 5A is really balanced. It's a ton of parity. You can even look at the team's records and, guys have beaten each other, and it's not like anyone's bad. It's just a lot of high quality teams all competing. So, we're not really looking past this one. We'd be morons to look past Pine Richland. But certainly you going into Saturday afternoon, we did think that there were so many quality teams this year, and everyone has a strength, and everyone, if they're playing their best football, they could win it.
Lastly, what are the biggest keys to have success against Pine Richland on Friday?
Number one thing we cannot do is, or we have to do, is possess the ball and not shoot ourselves in the foot. We can't be 1st and 20 because of a hold, or 2nd and 15 because we jumped off sides. We've got to stay ahead of the sticks. This team's too good to give them anything. Our defense has to really, really get guys on the ground quickly. They have a knack for breaking tackles. They're really good in space. So our coverage has to be fantastic along with our run defense. And one thing that we were happy about Friday that improved probably our best performance of the season was our special teams. And in any playoff game, we learned this last year. Special teams are vital, and everybody better play with pride on our special teams. And if you're covering a kick, make it count. You're getting a return. Change the game with a field position or breaking a kick for a touchdown. So all three phases, like as always, we got to excel in.
Well, John, thanks again for doing this. Congratulations on getting into the postseason. And I know you won't say it, but I think it's fair at the Westmoreland Sports Network. We could say we're rooting for Penn-Trafford and Franklin Regional Part 2 in the semifinal. So hoping that comes to fruition.
I would love to see it.
Absolutely. John, thanks so much. That's John Ruane, the head coach of Penn-Trafford, here on the special playoff edition of Westmoreland on the Gridiron.